Hi there. How are you? Good to see you.
Good to see you again.
How are you?
Yeah, that's me.
It's hard. After. You started and then.
Yeah. 修学，你已经这个讲。
Gola çocuk zor. Çubuk var.
중국어 그래.
çubuk var çıkarlar.
그러면 그러면
Çok
네. 그래서 그게 인지되는
So, good evening, everyone, and that once again we welcome in that our great senior Kenshin from the Namdolin Monastery, and that we have this opportunity and fortunate to have him here with us for this weekend. As you know, now today we begin with this public talk. And in the public talk, that as usual, the way that we're doing, we just start talk, and then at the end, if you have question answers, you can raise the question, and then we're just going like that, the normal way of we doing the public talk. And then from tomorrow morning at 10, we're going to do this Vajrakilaya empowerment. And then afternoon at 3, the Vajrakilaya Sadhana teachings, as normally that what we are doing every 29th day, is Vajrakilaya Sadhana. So we requested this all teachings, public talk, and then the empowerment, and then the teaching on this Vajrakilaya Sadhana to our great Kenshin. So that so I'm just reminding you all that what is going on in this weekend. So that's all for now. So once again that we're just welcoming. So now it's telling me to stop talking. Okay, so now I'll stop here. I'll pass to Kenshin.
Hello? Can you hear? Okay, now everybody is ready. Ready to fight with anger. So our topic is that how to deal with the anger to self and one's lover or something. No, I forgot the topic even. So however, there is big, kind of difference between the, I think, the Western science and then the Buddhist philosophy, based on the, kind of like existence of even just human beings. Because I know most of you, in the Western world, that you are so educated in, kind of science, and according to that, you have so much of, information about the science within your brain, because everything functions by brain. But according to the Buddhist philosophy, of course, we have brains, but the brain is not the main source. So we, how Buddhism has been kind of taught, it is actually, concentrate on mind. So here is already two divisions, mind and then the brain. So out of which that whether in the kind of Western world with the kind of brain functioning and neurology and chemistry, kind of so many things of that is science, kind of technology, including like this Western psychology, kind of which may be slightly different from the whole complete notion of the Buddhist way of explanation about mind and then kind of consciousness and so forth, that how these two have to kind of like understand, like in one way, kind of parallel to it. On the other hand, that in reality, which is more active in our being as a consciousness or brain and so forth between these two. So, according to that, I want you all prepared that you are concentrating, just to learn and to understand more about what is mind and then the consciousness, rather than just too much focusing on the brain. So without that, kind of first preparation in your, however you want to receive this, kind of like a talk. Otherwise, kind of like sometimes maybe it doesn't make much sense. Then it can be, kind of like confusing. So the main topic is about the anger. So anger as is anyway a action of mind, a sense of kind of mental action. How Buddha has taught that the mind and then mental factors and then mental afflictive emotions. So hatred is anyway one of the kind of afflictive emotions. And according to that, there is very extensive explanation in the sutra itself, how Buddha has taught. And according to that, there are so many of those commentaries written by Indian scholars from the Nalanda University, out of which even the Vasubandhu, who wrote the Abhidhamma Kosh, in which it explains about all the afflictive emotions, the mental factors and mental activity. That even though it is mainly all the afflictive emotions are rooted into kind of three, that which Nagarjuna says Decha Tiju Kundutang, Najan Marik Tatham. So which means, kind of like these afflictive emotions is the, anyway, cause of, kind of suffering. And Boswandu, in that he explained about this Decha Tishin Kondo. So Kondo, in Tibetan, that anger. So it is not just only those, kind of like 3 or 6, but these afflictive emotion, it is got to categorize into its, kind of subdivisions according to the sutra. Then, as you hear, 84,000 afflictive emotions. So whether one do not, that much of emotions are there, and that is not just only with the human being. More or less, all sentient beings have all those, kind of emotions. But at the same time, the other aspect of our, kind of like a pure nature, which also, kind of where you hear what is called, Buddha nature. So according to the Buddha nature, then we have all the enlightened, kind of qualities and wisdoms and enlightened forms and everything, spontaneously accomplished within ourselves, within all sentient beings. So that is according to the, Buddha's third turning wheel of Dharma. And then this the afflictive emotion, in the first turning wheel of Dharma with the Four Noble Truth teachings, and at the same time in the Mahayana Prajna Paramita Sutra that go through, kind of extensive explanation. So what I mean to say is, actually in our being from the Buddhist point of view, including the Vajrayana explanations, that we have both the good and bad side. So good to something that which is relating to the, all those quality equal to enlightened Buddha, which is, kind of Buddha nature. And at the same time, as a sentient being, then the sentient beings, the samsaric aspect, which is these, kind of emotions. So the Buddha nature, and then these emotions, afflictive emotions. So Buddha nature is supposed to understand as our true nature, our, like absolute true nature of mind, and also, one's, primordial pure nature of mind, according to the Vajrayana teaching. But then at the same time, why we are born as a sentient being, instead of just constantly abiding as the enlightened being or enlightened Buddha with that, Buddha nature quality, is because somehow, somewhere, in a long time back, we got confused with our own primordial pure nature, or with our Buddha nature quality, got confused. So that confusion, if in the first place, it is done or created by what is called ignorance. And with the ignorance, then the hatred, and then the desire, these 3 poisons, afflictive emotions, kind of like arise. And out of this, then it goes through, other many categories, which is one of them, what is talking about, kind of like a hatred, or, kind of anger. So now we are, kind of talking about how to deal with the anger. So it is not just to deal with anger, but actually according to Buddhism and Buddha's teaching, we have to deal with all these afflictive emotions. So as in the beginning of the Buddha's first turning wheel of Dharma, Buddha taught these afflictive emotions are cause of suffering. So anything that what it is that we identify as suffering, of course we want to get rid of it. So suffering is the consequences of the kind of negative action. So negative action is caused by afflictive emotions, such as like hatred, anger, desire, pride, ignorance, and so forth. So so as we know that we all wish to experience like a happiness, joy, prosperity, anyway, all those good positive things. So according to that, just first we have to know what we want and what we don't want. So every single sentient being, no matter whatsoever belief systems we may have, no matter whatever religions one may follow, no matter whatever culture, tradition, and so forth, but it is pretty sure that everybody wish to be kind of happy, and nobody wants to kind of suffer. So according to that, we have to just understand just how to deal with those kind of cause of suffering, including kind of like a hatred, and that which creates all this kind of suffering in this lifetime, and also in the past lifetime, and in the kind of future lifetimes, and also that causes kind of suffering for others, for oneself. So that first important to deal with the hatred or anger is just have to know it's kind of like the fault. If one gives rise to hatred, what it does and what it is and what it is causing, and what it is kind of consequences, one have to know. For example, like when we know the poison, and somebody explain, or don't touch this, or don't eat this, or keep this away because this is poison. So as a poison, almost all these kind of medicines even does not have kind of high dosage of poison, but where it says, or keep that out of children's reach, because they don't know whether it is kind of just poison or medicine or candy or whatever. They don't know, so they eat and then causes a problem. So similar like that, when we know like this, like anger and hatred and jealousy and pride and ignorance and so forth, these afflictive emotions are what is known as kind of like a poison. So what poison does is kind of like make you sick and uncomfortable, and then very strong poisons will kill you. And these afflictive emotions also does that same thing. For example, the moment you get angry, then I know just when even I know at least myself, when I get angry, what I feel like. It is just really disturbing. In my childhood, I used to be very short-tempered. for small things I get angry, but I never end up fighting with any of my friends or kids or anywhere. But anger is kind of something just very unpleasant and disturbing your mind and disturbing your friends. So in that same way, you also might have just anger arise. And when that anger arises, then what it does is kind of disturb your whole system. And it is kind of negative because the moment anger arises, it disturbs yourself, unpleasant and unsettled mind. And then with that anger also give rise to hatred. And then rest of all other negative emotions just kind of like arise. And then with that anger, if you speak out, then of course you are just saying something negative. And even you do any physical action, definitely it is a negative action. So that way you just kind of with your anger, you just hurt somebody and you cause problem to others, you disturb their mind, and then that kind of lose the peace of mind and peace of mind of oneself and peace of mind of others. And also that anger just kind of like a just steer out rest of all other emotions, negative emotions. So it is only creating what is called negative karma. Whether we believe in karma or not, but whatsoever these negative emotions arise, what is called mental action, mental negative karma. And with that, whatever we verbalize to somebody with anger, that is kind of speech negative karma. And then with the physical body, once you just kind of like a when you angry with somebody and then you say all those negative things, and then that will also get so disturbed and become angry to you, and then kind of say more negative things, and then still when you could not control, then kind of end up with physical body just fighting and kind of hitting, and worse to the worst, even just kind of killing somebody. So that way, first we have to know the fault of kind of anger, that anger as an afflictive emotion, and rest of all those kind of does not do anything good to oneself and others. And not only that, how much it disturbs at the present moment, and then how much it disturbs in the long run. Because some people kind of today just with some condition become angry and fight with somebody, and then hold that grudge, that anger hold in their mind. And every time one see that person, one already just get a negative thoughts and negative emotions, and then one have dislikes, and then how much it also make yourself unhappy, in a group, in a kind of like any gathering, when you see that person. You already feel very disturbed, and you just kind of dislike. And with that one person you dislike, their relative, their friends, and even that is their kind of like a group. So it is all negative when it arrives. It is negative, and its consequences is negative, and through that we can see in the world with one person being so angry with the other, and then end up fighting, and then considered as enemy, and then both sides have their group of people, and then they fight, and then just comes into almost like a worst to the worst, like even the world wars. As we look back into the human history, how all those kind of like a series, just civil wars or world wars, and kind of fighting among the just families, fighting against the kind of community, and just where it brings all sorts of division and kind of like a just kind of dividing, and that how much it is causing problem in the relative world. So that way one have to just deal with the kind of like a anger, whether you want to just be angry in that way or not. And you have to know that it's kind of consequences. And as I said earlier, with all those negative body, speech, mind, action, that karma, then that which also carries into your next life, as a kind of like its habitual tendency, and also its consequences, kind of maybe born into three lower realms, and moreover even kind of hell realm as the result of that negative karma. So in the common sense, also in one's family, if somebody is always very angry, then of course nobody appreciate that, and nobody like it. So because it is all disturbing and causing so much kind of emotion and suffering and unpleasant kind of life, and it just makes you feel very miserable. So first thing you have to know is kind of fault. Then how to deal with it. Of course, like according to Buddhism, that there is a based on the Four Noble Truth teaching, kind of how to deal with all these negative emotions. And at the same time, according to the Mahayana, kind of Buddhism, they are also explains all these kind of antidote. And at the same time, according to the Vajrayana, also kind of explain how to apply antidotes with all this, not just only anger, all these afflictive emotions. As long as we could not purify all these afflictive emotions, till to that no matter whatever we do in this world, whatsoever practices, whatever kind of meditation, whatsoever prayer chanting, and no matter whatever kind of however we may become famous and rich and have all these authorities and powers, whatsoever we may achieve, at the end still oneself is going to suffer, and oneself going to recycle in the samsara. Again, just kind of continuously born in samsara. So that what it is called, kind of like a cyclic existence. So oneself born from this human to animal realms, or then from like Holy Ghost beings, or hell realms, or sometimes from human being you do little bit of meditation, maybe born as a these God realms, form God realms or formless God realms, but still it is in the samsara. So almost there is no end of suffering of samsara. So it goes into kind of like a cycle. So according to the kind of like a science, that kind of emotions are kind of brain chemicals or neuro kind of like effects or effects, and that which also kind of some sort of mechanism within one's kind of brain, and that which kind of disturb the nervous system, and that which also carry into kind of like this life and so forth, kind of from childhood to grown up until to old age, and then how much it is kind of disturbing. So that is why, according to the science, they say those who have so much of hatred and anger, that is, which also kind of like eats up our immune system. So when our immune systems become weak, then we catch up with all sorts of kind of sickness and disease. So in that way, if we think who is causing kind of problem, who is creating all this kind of suffering, who is doing all this kind of like a miserable life, who is sending you to kind of hell realm and so forth. All those does not depend upon whether one should believe in that way or not. It does not depend upon what oneself tried to believe in this lifetime. It depends upon, according to the relative truth, relative reality, and decide that all sorts of whatever sorts of causes and conditions one have assembled with one's kind of like this the mental factors and then the verbal speech and physical action, that which it decides where you can be born. And there is no anybody in the world to blame anywhere. So, according to that, in Buddhism, that where it explains, when moment you arise anger, you have to just realizing or anger is negative, and this is cause of all sorts of suffering and wandering into samsara. So at that moment you have to think, how I should deal with this anger and rest of negative emotions. Whether you want to continue reborn in samsara and end up with all this kind of suffering, or you want to stop getting deeper in samsara and get rid of the suffering. So that is in one's own hand. And at that moment, only we have choice, whether you make the right choice or wrong choice. There, at that moment, we have freedom. We have our own choice. We have that right to follow the kind of the right path or wrong path. So at that time, the first thing is you have to just remember about your Buddha nature quality. I'm not just like, no one have to think, I'm not just like that very ordinary with so much of anger or hatred or jealousy. I also have good quality. One have to think in that way. I also have my nature, the Buddha nature quality, the compassion, loving kindness, caring for others, practicing about patience, tolerance. And all those positive qualities also, it is just together with oneself. So if one don't want to, kind of end up with all this kind of suffering and don't want to continuously born in samsara, then here's the moment where you deal with the anger and so forth, that instead of being angry, you just develop, loving kindness. Instantly, kind of like a just moment anger arrives, you just pause and realize, this is cause of suffering. I don't want to end up, suffering anymore. And instead of that, I want to just, kind of experience more joyful and happy and a peaceful life. And that God is, loving kindness. And so like hatred, instead of being hateful, you give rise to compassion. And at the same time, with the compassion, loving kindness, then when anything is coming from other side, because one condition is why you feel angry or hatred or jealousy is because of when other kind of peoples, even other animals, even inanimate substances. For example, like you are driving on the road, and then there is a kind of piece of nail and stuck in your kind of wheel, and then your car got flat, and then you just get first you get angry with your car. What is this? Kind of what happened to my car? This is so bad, and then you get it and look it. All of this kind of maybe some nail or stone just stuck there, and then you just this. How much one get angry with the kind of nail or something. So so angry and anger or this hatred and so forth just arrive with any of that which kind of like condition. So being angry with inanimate substances, all the negative karma coming to oneself. However, you kind of like smash your, you just become so angry because you need to get somewhere and you got so disturbed, and then you kick your kind of like car, or you kick that kind of stone or nail, or you smash and with anger. So what that kind of inanimate substance doesn't feel anything. It's all just kind of creating oneself, accumulating all those negative karma. So that is why Acharya Shantideva says, first, when any sort of external condition, whether it's human being or non-human being or inanimate substance or whatever, including sometimes these elements, kind of rain and sunshine, how it kind of like become a condition that makes you angry or kind of so forth. So at that moment, Shantideva says, "Oh, just you just like pretend like a piece of wood, not just getting afflicted with that emotion, with anger or hatred. Just merely almost like a thing, like a piece of wood. So piece of wood is inanimate, so which means you are not taking any kind of reaction with that kind of like a condition. So that what it is called, just when anger arrives, you pause for a moment, and then instantly you think about just the condition. What all sorts of things are possible in one's life. Anything is possible in that way, good way, bad way. Of course, the one problem is we always expect everything is good and perfect and just happy and successful. But however we wish, if we don't know how to assemble all the right causes and conditions, not necessarily we can just fulfill our wishes. So one have to know exactly, just every single aspect of this phenomena in this world, what are their specific cause and condition. So if one wish to be happy, then kind of instead of anger, you give rise to kind of loving kindness, which means not just only at that moment. We need to train our mind all the time, just with all these beings, with all sorts of kind of insects and so forth, the sense of kind of like a loving kindness. Instead of anger and so forth, all this negative emotion, one try to kind of exercise and practice and remind of these and all the positive qualities of the Buddha nature, such as like loving kindness, compassion, and besides that, whatsoever those kind of like attacks or harms coming from other side, kind of practice of tolerance. So that is why even in the sutra that says that Shatanta Vukatume, Shatanta Vitipame, or Savata Vikatume, which means there is no such kind of like a hardship engaging into practice like patience. So one more, just if oneself is not properly trained one's mind, if oneself is not getting used to exercise and develop these kind of Buddha nature positive qualities, then one cannot be patient. So the kind of the hatred or anger, there is no anything worse or there is no anything bad, negative like hatred or anger. That which is a very, very kind of like a heavy karma. That which even because of that, it may lead oneself into the kind of like hell ring. So it is just kind of to reborn in hell ring also one did it. There is no anybody to blame. So that is why Chandrakirti is in the 6th chapter about kind of like a patience. That where it explains that so like it's saying Kalpa, like eons, about kind of 1,000 eons lifetimes, all the kind of generous practice, prostrations and all these kind of maintaining moral contacts and so forth, all these practices which virtuous activity, how much you have done, and that can be instantly kind of like washed away by a kind of like a very strong kind of anger or like a rage that which arises in your kind of mind. So that much it is kind of like a negative, that much it is destructive, and that much it is causing problems to kind of oneself. And all these things, if we don't learn, if we don't understand how Buddha has taught it and how all these great masters kind of taught it, how these things can happen and how these things work and how all these consequences are happening in in one's life. If we don't educate that, then in relative world, people think like, somebody is my enemy, and if I just kind of control, or if I kill my enemy, then I'm just in the kind of victory, and then I'll be happy. It is wrong. It is ignorance. It is the delusion. And there is no anything good things are happening. Look at this world history about all those warfare. Look within the whole complete history of each and every country with the hatred and anger, how much they have done negative things. And does they really experience happiness? Does they really achieve kind of joy? Does their mind is still in peace? No. The history itself explains about. And that what is the reality, and that what is the truth, and that what it is the kind of nature of life in relation with the kind of like hatred and angry and these negative emotions, what it is kind of creating all those suffering consequences. And that does not depend upon any kind of religion. That does not depend upon any kind of faith, and does not depend upon any kind of belief, does not depend upon any culture or system or anything. It's just the nature of life, and it is the nature of the specific causes and conditions as that which creates happiness or suffering, what is going on kind of in this world as a human being or even as an animal, and so forth. The six classes of the sentient beings, how they are just kind of like a wandering. So so according to that, based on the kind of like a Four Noble Truth teaching, then instead of like a involved into this negative emotion, one try to kind of involve into all this positive thinking or virtuous actions and virtuous kind of like activity. And based on that, if we go a little bit kind of higher practices with the Mayana, that how to deal with the like anger and hatred and so forth, then according to Mayana, it is a teaching about what is called kind of bodhicitta, that how to how to train our mind with these kind of like practices and training on the compassion and loving kindness and the wisdom. The antidote of ignorance is wisdom. Antidote of jealousy is rejoice. Antidote of anger is, as I explained earlier, loving kindness. Antidote of hatred is developing kind of compassion. And to experience kind of like a better life and better kind of happiness and joy, including in your next life, to be more handsome and more beautiful. For that, where in the kind of Chandakirti text also says, "Sebe deshin kyo tambala, panda luta lumi shevayi." So when you are patient, always being very patient, no matter whoever they are causing problem, and because of that, it's kind of like a consequences that in your next lifetime you just have a much better kind of like appearance, beautiful and handsome, and not only that, no matter however you appear, people naturally like you, people naturally love you, people naturally want to be nice to you, and that kind of in our life also that can happen. Some people just a stranger, we don't know who they are, still kind of naturally being very nice, being very helpful. And similarly, some people just kind of moment you see or moment they see you, they dislike you, they hate you, they show kind of sort of unhappiness or just anger. Even you didn't do anything at all, but people dislike you. That is why that is happening. Once I will also get confused. I didn't just say anything bad to this person, and I didn't just even know this person. I don't know why this person doesn't like me. That is the karma, the consequences of your negativity in the past lifetime. You have been very hateful to somebody. You have been always angry to somebody. Where you have been causing negativity to somebody. And that is why the consequences, kind of like a happening to, kind of like oneself in this life. And these things, if we don't do work in this moment of life when we are born as a human being and could not, kind of like exhaust this kind of karma, then it will take a long time. Because as a human being, we have all this special, not just that potential, but we have this special capability that how human mind or human brains have a extraordinary capability and extraordinary potentials and extraordinary sense of kind of like a just understanding what is right and what is wrong. At least kind of have that conscientiousness as a human and compared to all these animals. So so according to that, in the Mayana also just to develop that kind of bodhicitta. And developing bodhicitta is combination of compassion and wisdom. And as a wisdom to just kind of like understand so many things. And as a compassion, the one most kind of important thing that where one can develop compassion in one's being, that which is actually exercising the positive qualities of our Buddha nature. For example, like compassion has kind of mere compassion, that which is limited compassion, that almost all beings have. Then there is kind of, as this compassion develops more, then there is the great compassion, Nyingje Chenpo. And then this great compassion, as you continue to exercise and continue to meditate and continue to maintain that practice, then that is kind of compassion spread far and wide to almost all these beings. And then that is the great compassion. Your compassion includes to be compassionate to all these beings. And then that compassion still, as we train more and more, it just kind of like expand almost like the space, and that where we cannot know the number of sentient beings. So number of sentient beings are unlimited, immeasurable. So after some time, one's mind that generates that kind of compassion, no matter whatsoever kind of immeasurable numbers of sentient beings may be, I still want to be compassionate to all these beings that I wish and I want to kind of help to end their suffering to the immeasurable number of sentient beings. That sort of compassion, once one develops in one's being, then it is called immeasurable compassion. And from that immeasurable compassion, then as you gain wisdom. So wisdom in the sense of first, kind of like educating oneself, hearing all these kind of teachings. What it has taught in the Buddha's teaching sutra, and how many of these great masters, scholars of kind of Indian and Tibetan and so forth, kind of many other Chinese or Japanese or all the Buddhist countries, and so many great masters already happened following the Buddha's path of this kind of Dharma teaching, and there are all this. Now, today in this modern world, these kind of teachings are spread all over the world within the kind of Western world. So that way, there are also just kind of developing all these great scholars, those who have good understanding, and also good kind of like practitioners who just engage into such kind of like a practices because they see the quality of these, kind of like a positive intention and positive motivation and positive action based on, compassion and loving kindness and so forth, including the wisdom. So part of that first thing is just need to educate by hearing all this teaching, listening to over and over and over. Plus, reading all these books, all these Dharma books, which has lots of, kind of like a, oh, soothing information. Even you just read it, you just feel very joyful. Even you kind of like understand, you feel just, kind of joyful. And if you practice, you feel more joyful. If you experience, you are having, true experience of joy. And that is how it develops into, kind of all this, what is called bodhisattva, the noble being, who are so, kind of constantly, caring for all other sentient beings and doesn't care for one's own happiness. And that sort of very, very positive mentality can be transformed. And those all are the ways how to deal with the anger and so forth, all these negative emotions. And with that, just knowledge, then, just knowing all these Dharma teachings and having great deal of knowledge, including having all these kind of degrees, PhD in Buddhist philosophy, but it is still knowledge. So to really end the suffering, then one have to, kind of engage into these practices properly. That which you, kind of really practice the patience. To really, kind of develop your compassion and loving kindness instead of hatred and anger and jealousy and so forth. Because now you become smart, you become, kind of clever, you become just, wise enough. Oh, I know this. Anger is causing, problem, suffering to me. And loving kindness is that which helps me and that leads me to nirvana and all these qualities, positive qualities that can bring to me. So means you know what is right and wrong. You know what is virtue and what is non-virtue. And when one know, then one have to follow that path. If one doesn't practice, that knowledge is knowledge. So at the moment of, kind of death, still one feel frustrated. Still oneself worrying. Still oneself scared. And then decide that one may also regret, oh, I haven't done enough practice. I should have done more practice. Now I'm just facing this. I haven't stabilized my, patience. I haven't stabilized my compassion. I haven't stabilized my loving kindness. I haven't, stabilized my wisdom. I haven't stabilized my bodhicitta. Oh, now what I'm going to do? And too late. When you have this, opportunity and this chance and time, and where you even have that, kind of that capability to really, kind of follow up. At that time, if one doesn't do and waste time, whatever that time we waste will not come back again. Once it is gone, it is just gone forever, forever. So only what we are confronting is just the future time. And that also we don't know how long, life can live and how much time one have to stabilize, kind of such thing. So that way, then finally comes, kind of not just, hearing or educating, but reflect insisting on those meaning and then engaging into practice that practice in one's day-to-day lifetime. Because we live in a society, this modern society, 21st century society. How much of these kind of beings are there, which is those who have so much of negative thought and never ever have tiniest thought about compassion to any other living being. So one knows that they don't know Dharma, they don't know consequences of all those negativity what they are doing. They don't know how to deal with the anger because they don't have any tool. They haven't learned about what is an antidote for that. What is compassion? What is loving kindness? What is patience? What is tolerance? What is meant by to have a kind heart? What is meant by caring for others? They haven't learned that. They don't have that tool. So they become just so desperately, kind of deluded their mind with so much of ignorance, and that they are just kind of like, just in the darkness of their own negativity, and they can't see the light of wisdom. And that is the problem. And it is also not just easy, just immediately just kind of bring that kind of light into them. Other than that, where one develop this compassion, how and which way I can help this being one day. Maybe not this lifetime, maybe not next lifetime. Doesn't matter how long it may take, still one wish and wants to help and benefit them to kind of transform all those delusion and ignorance and afflict emotions into wisdom and into the light of wisdom with all those kind of qualities. And that is how we deal with the anger and so forth. That is how we understand about the kind of like a fault of this samsaric mind and the qualities of the enlightened mind. And knowing that what we are kind of wishing for, happiness, what is the cause of it? And what is the cause of all this suffering and problem if one don't want to? And that way, one have to engage into those kind of like practices, training one's mind in one's day-to-day lifetime. The moment situation arises, when the problem arises in front of you, whoever they are, at that moment you have to apply the antidote and you have to engage in the practice. And instead of kind of like a defending yourself, instead of challenging, and instead of being afflicted, instead of fighting back, the moment kind of that situation arises, you have to look into your mind and just transform that kind of like hatred or anger or jealousy and pride and ignorance and so forth, to just work with it, to just kind of get rid of it with all this just by arising positive quality. How that that in this all this kind of like a teaching in Buddhism, Buddhist commentaries, that which is saying, oh, nyamun dana mandri chabata, yendu sibe chaba kamchite, chachuk yende china tenjute. So all this completely Buddha's teachings and its commentaries, and then educating into it and then practicing, is just mean to apply an antidote for all these afflictive emotions. So the real enemy is not anything outside any being, which is saying Nyamunta. So the afflictive emotion is your enemy. Because of anger, if one doesn't know how to deal with it, and then create being just so angry, and then create a negative karma, and you may just kill somebody, and then because of that consequence, you may just fall into the hell realm. So who is causing that kind of suffering and problem and taking your life is enemy, that the anger and hatred and so forth, that it lead you to hell realm. Whether one say, I don't believe in hell, it's okay. Just like you have freedom to what you want to believe and what you don't want to believe. But problem is, even you don't believe in hell, and you created all this kind of negative karma, and one day just your consciousness or the mind leaves from this body, and when you born into that hell room where you are facing all sorts of kind of suffering, at that time there is no anything can be done. As I used to say that at that time you'll not find a lawyer to fight for it, for the justice, and there is no court. There is no judge that who can just kind of like where you can bring a lawyer and fight for it, and there is no way that this is not my religion. And there is no way you can just complain to anyone. I don't believe hell, and why I have to be here? Where you are going to complain? Who is going to listen? And who will help you? So that sort of reality is definitely going to happen. If one create all this kind of, if one doesn't deal with this kind of negative emotions like hatred and anger and so forth. So if we are smart enough, this is the opportunity where we educate ourselves, and then where we engage into the right path, and where we just try to reduce and try to get rid of all these negative emotions, including the kind of anger. And then besides that part of higher practice in the Mahayana, that they are saying kind of like about emptiness. So emptiness is anyway very powerful according to Mahayana, like Prajnapadita talking about based on the wisdom, talking about just to see the nature of anger, to look into the kind of like anger itself, how that anger or hatred or any of these afflictive emotions looks like, and just investigating and examining thoroughly into these negative emotions, whether they have a concrete, solid, inherent nature or not. So when you truly examine in that way, you will never ever find all these afflictive emotions, this anger or hatred, all this. You will never ever find anything that which has a solid, concrete identification or inherent existence or inherent true nature. You will never ever find. Means it moment you apply that kind of the investigation, it dissolves into emptiness. Same like this, quantum physics, that as they kind of examine with all this kind of quantum mechanism, whatever it is called, I don't know much. But that's as they kind of like apply those quantum physics, and they could not find anything at the end of the day that say, oh, this is truly existing. Even scientists, the scientific investigation and the quantum physics and so forth, now they are just coming close to what Buddha has taught 2,500 years before. Now they are experiencing with their own investigation. They just analyze and investigate and do all sorts of kind of um, just examining so many things whatsoever it is called, a substance or chemical or kind of energy or light, even wherever they come to like atoms or molecules, electron or proton or something, wherever they come to, they cannot find anything inherent existent. Even these solid things are never existed, how we see, how we touch, even these are not existing as inherent true nature, then whatever they thoughts are just merely emotion. It's like the bubbles of water. It just arrives, and if you know how to deal with it, it will just pop, just gone. There is no anything very concrete, solid, kind of identity that you cannot smash out of it. So that way, where one experiences, if one kind of investigate thoroughly, then anger itself is emptiness in nature. Anger is also not existing as as true existence or inherent existence. Similarly, all these emotions, all the negative emotions does not have inherent existence. So, so that way, first analyze and investigate. If you cannot develop compassion, then come look into that angry thought when anger arises, and then look into that kind of anger, what it looks like, instead of kind of like following the command of the anger. Till now, why we are born in samsara and why we are experiencing all sorts of suffering and all sorts of problems, including sickness, why we are experiencing all this unhappiness, is because we became the slave of these negative emotions. That is the truth and that is the reality. Whenever anger arises, then the anger, kind of this show says, oh, you get angry, you just fight back, you say negative things, you just challenge, you just do this and that. And you are following that. And it ends up creating suffering for oneself. All these negative emotions, that is what Acharya Shandadeva says in his Pochara Avatar. He says, oh, now I recognize my enemy. My real enemy, that which is torturing me and causing all these kind of problems and creating all this kind of suffering and making my life miserable, is that enemy is hiding within me. It's not really outside there. And this, kind of the afflicted emotions, as I said, we become slave of that. According to that, acting and creating all these consequences, and that what it is called karma happening. So then he said, now from today onward, I recognize my enemy. I'm not going to listen to you. No matter whatever it is, kind of, I'm not going to listen to, kind of my enemy, anger, hatred, jealousy, pride, ignorance, because you have been always causing me so much problem and suffering. Till now, I could not liberate out of this, samsara. So that's what it is, kind of Acharya Shandadeva in his text. You read those books, Bodhicharya Avatar. Very, very good book. Very meaningful, very beneficial. That will help you to liberate, which means that will help to end all your suffering. Not only that, it will become a wish fulfilling gem that will fulfill all your wishes, what you wish. And that is how to deal with the anger and so forth with this the kind of like a afflict emotion. And that is how to deal with the anger arise. You deal with, okay, you are here. I know what you are doing. And just you kind of look into it and investigate. And then this, anger, your wisdom, your light of wisdom shines on it. And then the, kind of like the early morning dews of this, kind of like anger just kind of slowly fades away. And then you don't have to feel the consequences of that of the anger of that suffering. You don't have to experience that anymore. In that same way, every single these afflictive negative emotions, you have to just kind of like face with it, and that is how you engage into practice in your day-to-day lifetime, how to deal with all these kind of emotions. And that way, kind of you will feel yourself how much you change. Almost like after a while, anger dare not to arise because your mind becomes just wise enough with all this wisdom and all these positive qualities, compassion and loving kindness and so forth, then the anger seems like, oh, now I become very weak. I cannot disturb him, or I cannot disturb her. Now the wisdom part become very powerful, and that way, kind of like all the negative emotions, no matter it is like 84,000 negative emotions, become less and less and less, less and less, and then one day everything just kind of disappears. And all the positive arise within you, especially kind of with the wisdom that realizing the emptiness nature of the mind itself. And once you have the direct perception of the emptiness nature of the mind, and if there is no mind, then there is no way to arise all these emotions. And when there is no more any kind of these negative emotions, including positive emotions, joyful, happiness, pleasure, these are also emotions. But these emotions are also very temporary. Even though we like it, being joyful, happy, pleasant, and nice, and it feels good. But it is also not necessarily really good for just ever, because when that kind of joy fades away, again you end up into unpleasant experience. When that happiness kind of just goes away, then again just kind of suffering comes back. So in that way, these both emotions are very relative. So that is why high level of practice, whether it is kind of like the anger or loving kindness, both has to be realized. It's emptiness nature. That is according to the Mahayana, including Vajrayana. Even though Vajrayana, there are kind of higher techniques to deal with it, but it takes time. So that way, kind of you are realizing the emptiness nature of mind. Then what you gain is what is called wisdom. Once you experience, once you have the direct experience or the direct perception of the emptiness nature of mind, then you gain what is called transcendental wisdom. That wisdom is transcend. So transcend from all the samsaric mental activity. Transcend from samsara. Transcend from all this samsaric, kind of problems. And you only have that, kind of wisdom, which is like the light. And once you gain that, it is like, you are in a deep sleep, completely ignorant and darkness, and you don't know what is happening here. And the moment you wake up, you see everything. And similar like that, from the darkness of the ignorance and darkness of this delusion, once you kind of have the light of the realization of the emptiness with that, kind of wisdom, it is like, kind of the daylight time, like, kind of sun shines and all the darkness are just instantly gone. And then you are just being, kind of like awake from that, kind of ignorance. That is the highest level of, method to deal with the, anger and rest of all the afflictive emotions, especially the ignorance. Anger arises because of ignorance. Hatred arises because of ignorance. Jealousy arises because of ignorance. Because ignorance is that you don't know what is right, what is wrong, what is good, what is bad, what is causing problem to oneself. So that way, one can try to work with the, or one can deal with the kind of anger and so forth. That for one's own happiness, for one's own liberation, for one's own kind of ultimate result of kind of like a ultimate happiness is also to deal with this anger and so forth, all this afflict emotion with that method, and also to help and benefit rest of all other sentient beings, starting with your family and friends and relatives and so forth, expanding that kind of like the great knowledge, great understanding, great realization, great perfection of that enlightened state of mind, and that which kind of help to kind of benefit all other sentient beings to be liberated from the suffering of samsara. How like Shakyamuni Buddha has kind of liberated countless beings just only turning three wheels of Dharma teaching. And then from that onward, all these Buddha's followers till to today, till to our kind of present, these great masters, countless sentient beings got benefited, liberated out of kind of suffering and samsara. There in our kind of this Dharma teaching, there are lists of all those beings who got liberated and who attained enlightenment, and that how just somehow those are the examples. Those are the examples that if you try to work with the or try to deal with these kind of negative emotions with those kind of like a practices, then these are the beings who got kind of liberated. And there is no any single sentient being as an example that somebody with so much of anger and achieve that great happiness. No any single example. Being very negative, achieve happiness. Impossible. So that is what kind of Lama Mevarambaji in his kind of the get to knowledge. He explains what is the kind of, for example, planting the sugar cane and waiting for like just chili. Impossible. Waiting for poisonous what they just cultivating, planting the seed of poisonous seed and waiting for medicine tree. Impossible. So causing so much suffering and problem and doing all sorts of negatives to somebody and waiting for happiness. Impossible. Never happened. Just you can look into these, our world. Those people who are mean and negative and afflicted, their life always end up in a, just suffering way. And those who are always compassionate, loving, and caring and kind person, they always end up with a, kind of like a good life and a, joyful, even joyful death. So that what it is the reality, knowing that, and then how to deal with these, kind of like angers, not just only for oneself and not just only for one family, not just only few numbers of being, but how to just help the all sentient beings. And that's what it is according to the Mayan. But also it is dependent upon every individual capability. How much of capability one has. Even just having this Buddha nature quality, we don't have tiny bit of difference. Even with the enlightened Buddha, the enlightened Buddha's Buddha nature and our Buddha nature, there is no tiny bit of difference. The Kuntu Sampo, the Buddha Samantabhatara's enlightened mind and our Buddha nature, there is no difference. But the problem is the Buddha and the Buddha Samantabhatara, they clear out that obscuration. They clear out. We are under this obscuration. This, as I said earlier, we become slave of this obscuration, of this kind of negative emotion. That is the difference. That is why we are in samsara. They are in enlightenment, in Buddha field. We are getting into recycle ourselves. Just after we die, it's not the end of yourself. That is beginning of your cycle of life. And once you die just because you are going to reborn. And you will reborn because you will die. Without the dying, nobody can reborn. Without getting rebirth, no way to die. So that birth and die and birth and die and birth and die and then goes through this kind of life. And we're thinking every day, I'm doing lots of things for this my life, but there is nothing. At the end of the day, you have done nothing. Anything whatsoever you have accumulated, you leave behind. Including this body, how we try to take care of this body. Oh, this is my body, this is my eye, this is my head, this is my heart, this is my lungs. How much we take care of it with so much of attachment and grasping, clinging. But at the end of the day, we leave everything and then nobody wants it. At that time, nobody wants it. Even the hospital said, take away, cannot live here. It's smelly. Even the relatives, family also say, yeah, it's very smelly, better to take away. At that time, nobody, no any lovers there. Oh yeah, I love him or her, but it's so smelly. Take away. Nobody wants, even you give free, So at that time, what you are with is what you have done. Those virtues and non-virtues. Those quality, how you have how you try to deal with the anger and the hatred and all those afflicting emotions. And at the same time, those who could not deal with anger and become the kind of slave of anger, then that karma, that the kind of consequences is going to be follow after you. So then kind of we get a recycled over and over and over, and then they never end the suffering. So that only possibility to end the suffering is when you are born as a human being with the human mind, with the human brain, with the human understanding, with all this Dharma education, that which talks about the truth and reality. All everything is exactly happening according to its reality, and that what it is the nature of life, and that what it is the nature of these emotions, and that what it is nature of these just Buddha nature qualities. That we have to know how to deal with the anger, and that way how we have to get smarter and wise, and then realize, and then one can be liberated, and then one can help all other sentient beings, including your most loved ones and your family. Without liberating yourself, you cannot just help. So that what is I think anyway, this all what is based on what I heard from all these my masters, what I studied, and what I have tiny of understanding about Buddhism, and how to deal with the kind of anger with this kind of practices. That what it is. I don't know if you like it or not, or you just feels correct or not, or I don't know how much you want to follow and you want to listen. But however, as part of our schedule, I presented with that. So I hope out of this maybe like tiny bit maybe beneficial to you all. Thank you. So stop here, and unless you have questions. No, you can have questions. Yes.
When the body dies, we take rebirth in different parts of the world, at the universe. Rebirth.
Yeah. Rebirth, rebirth only as a sentient being. Depending upon what sorts of kind of like causes and condition one have assembled, according to that one may reborn if one more of the virtues like a 70-80 virtues activity accumulations of merit, then one may born as a human being. And if one have accumulated more of negative non-purchase actions, and they never try to work to deal with the anger and so forth, then one may born in animal life. Or so much of like almost like 100% negativity, then born in hell. 70% kind of negativity born in this Holy Ghost being. And if one have done like kind of just 100% kind of positive, in generally can born in God realm. But 100% positive or engaging into this Pochita and the actualizing the emptiness nature of mind, then one can attain liberation. And so forth, that within this kind of 6 classes of being will just reborn over and over and over and over. Yeah.
I belong to the Hinayana sect. Hinayana sect went to southern, south, and the Mahayana went to the north.
No, that is just kind of south and north location of place. How this Dharma flourished. So it is not important about that. It's important about what is the essence of Buddha's teaching based on the kind of like Four Noble Truths teaching. And within the Four Noble Truths teaching, there is a completely perfect path that one can attain liberation. And similarly, in the Mahayana, there is a complete path that one can attain liberation and attain enlightenment. And similarly, in the Vajrayana, which is called Tibetan Buddhism, also has a complete path that one can attain liberation, enlightenment. Yeah.
Because Mahayana went to the north and the Hinayana went to the south.
That is from India.
Sri Lanka.
Yeah, India, after just Buddha passed away, then all the Buddhas followed. All those great masters, teachers and practitioners. Some went to, Sri Lanka and Thailand and Burma and Indonesia, Korea, Southeast Asia, then, China, then Tibet, then Nepal, and then
Australia too.
Yeah, Australia, yes, yeah, long time back. Even in this Afghanistan, West Pakistan,
Russia.
Yes, also Russia too. Yeah,
Russia and Stockholm. They have got a Buddhist statue in Stockholm.
yes. Yeah, it's spread out. Now it is just coming back to in the Western world. It's good,
Dalai Lama's birthday tomorrow.
Yeah, right. That is kind of liberation. If you don't have question, means you all are enlightened. So then why you come here? Just for listen to this topic? Yes.
My question is that as you just taught us, when we are getting angry, and we have to think about what is the cause of this anger. Also think about the consequences of getting angry. Can you just give some very specific example of practicing this method?
The specific example is when you get angry. So with the anger, sometimes you say, kind of very negative words to somebody. And then that person may be more angry. And then, if that person gets so angry and then smash you, and maybe even one can be dead. So the consequences of anger is very negative. Or sometimes, kind of one gets so angry and the other person also angry, and then that person fight you back, and then you fight back, and then you got so angry, just you become so blind, and you don't know what you're doing, and you may throw something, and that person dies. Then in this lifetime also, police come and catch you and go to jail. So those are the kind of the consequences of being angry and creating those kind of karma. So that is why if one don't want to end up with this kind of suffering, then one have to, as I said, kind of when anger arises, then the moment you pause and don't follow the command of the anger. Instead, you just transform into kind of loving kindness. Or if anger arises from other side, you practice patience. You don't get afflicted with the other person's anger. Don't get afflicted. Don't conceptualize. Still, you just okay, never mind. You just be patient and generate more compassion and more loving kindness. So that person may yell at you and kind of say so many things. You are still just keep your mind very calm and peaceful and you wish to help and thinking, oh, this person is under the control of the delusion of anger. So that you have to generate more compassion. That because of that anger and negative thought, that person have no control that oneself, what oneself is saying, and saying all the negative things. One should generate more compassion. So that way, one have to train one's mind in one's day-to-day lifetime, every time reminding about it, and then every time practicing, and then sometimes kind of sit and then concentrate on compassion. And to do those practice, if one still don't get much understanding, then read this Bodhicharya Avtara, the Bodhisattva way of life, the Chandrakirti's, Chandradeva's that textbook, very, very good. It is very famous all over the Buddhist country. Now it is translated in so many so many languages. Just read that.
So, in order to be able to deal with anger at that point, actually, that thing comes from the daily practice.
Mm,
It's
Yeah.
not that we have to imagine in that situation, then we try to tame ourselves. It's just in daily practice, we continuously practicing bodhicitta and so on. So forth. Then we will be able to
yes, apply. Yeah. If you have that practice every day, then at that moment also you have to remind, oh, I've been doing my practice. I used to be more compassionate than just getting afflicted with anger. So when you stabilize with your daily practice, then at that time you can immediately remember about those teaching or the practice or that kind of the just like applying that antidote when one remember, and then one can become more stable and strong and be patient. Yeah. Mhm.
thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so then you have
Chan Buddhism is present in the human mind. Chan Buddhism, Chinese Buddhism.
Zen Buddhism.
Chan Buddhism, Chinese Buddhism.
Huh?
It's a human mind. Human mind.
Chan
Chan Buddhism, Chinese Buddhism.
Chinese Buddhism.
It's present in the human mind. Human mind.
No, Chinese Buddhism or Tibetan Buddhism or Indian Buddhism or Southeast Asia Buddhism or Buddhism is Buddhism.
Oh.
Yeah. Only the difference is in the kind of different language.
Oh. Language.
Yeah.
Different.
Yeah, different language.
Thank you.
You are. Okay, so then we do short dedication. So now the Kundu Sambo Deyan Deshin Deta Kuti Cheso Nama Kewa Dita Tamje Ratu Mo Tusum Shimpe Kewa Tamje Moa Kama Juto Maba Kewe Tawa Digi Sambo Jeje Ratu Moa Kewa Kundu Yanda Rama Cheke Mara Mochi Sadhana Lange Yunde Ratu Toje Chame Goma Nyurdo. Oh yeah, thank you.
Okay.